Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We are in a crazy time right now with Trump's MAGA regime picking a fight in LA to give Fox News the images they're desperate for, to frighten their viewers and to crush our civil liberties. There has never been a more important time to come together to defend our democracy. We are glad you are here, pitching in however you can, helping inform and motivate the resistance in Kentucky. In addition to our amazing co-hosts and really two fantastic co-hosts joining me today, we're going to be joined this week by Representative Adam Moore with an update from Frankfort. Always love to hear that guy's perspective on what's happening in our state capital. And then Craig Blair with Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance, kind of a new organization formed to fight Trump 2.0. They've been doing amazing work all around Lexington, helping to elevate opposition to the crazy things we're experiencing right now. So really great show. Excited to have you join us today. So are you ready, though, before we get into it? Are you ready to help create a more compassionate Commonwealth? Because look around, people. We are sorely in need of significant political change in Kentucky. To get it, we need long-term power building to plug more voters into the races that really matter. And if you like our governor, but you can't stand what the GOP supermajority in Frankfort has done with their power, we hope you'll support Progress Kentucky in our efforts to fix the problem. Right now, we're focused on fighting back against Trump's MAGA regime. We need your help. Please make a monthly contribution right now via our secure online website. Act Blue to help turn Kentucky purple. $10, $20, $200. Why not? It all adds up. And unfortunately, none of it is tax deductible because we are a C4 organization. And that part of the tax code, you don't get to write us off. So, but you'll feel good about it, All right. So let's check in with our co-hosts. Let us know who you are, where you are. What are you protesting today? You there on the internet watching along. We mean you as well. I want to hear what you're most concerned about today. Feel free to put that in the chat while we're sharing ours. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Lexington's Childsburg neighborhood. Really just a sea of vinyl siding out here, people. And my sign says it's time to break the glass, folks, right? We are in a break the glass moment. And I think it is all hands on deck. It's whatever you want to call it. Time to gear up to fight back. All right, let's check in. Co-host here. Let's see, Chris. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here in Berea, Kentucky, and my protest sign says, "Who wants some chicken tacos?" Nice. I'm ready.
Laughter, sometimes it's either laugh or cry, so I think that I go with laughing for sure. I say, Dr. Clardy, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Chris. My sign says this is a time of code blue. There's a passage out of the Hebrew Bible, Job 3:25, when Job says that the thing that I have feared the most has come upon me. And this is where we are at this moment. We have troops, National Guardsmen and Marines in the streets of Los Angeles to put down a peaceful, nonviolent protest just because Donald Trump does not like them. We've had threats against the incumbent governor of California and incumbent mayor of Los Angeles by the president of the United States. The thing that we have been warning about since 2015 and 2016, 2020 and 2024, that if Donald Trump were to get elected to the presidency, we would become an authoritarian state. We are at that moment right now, and it is a time of code blue.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, all right. So, folks, we're going to be a little bit different tonight. We usually laser focus on Kentucky politics and stories about Kentucky politics because, you can turn about anywhere to find national politics. You can turn on MSNBC whenever you want. You can turn on a suite of, podcasts and live streams talking about national politics. There's just not that many to talk about Kentucky politics, especially with an eye towards how we build power to change what's going on, a progressive lens, right? That's what we bring to it. So we usually just focus on those stories, but as I think everyone's alluded to, we are in a crazy moment right now, and I think talking about the federal piece of it is really important. And so we're going to talk about the resistance to it. We're going to talk about where we actually are. So news of the week, we're going to do a couple stories. One brought to us by Dr. Clardy about what exactly where are we headed right now? There's been a lot of conversation about the terms to use. And I thought we would turn to our resident professor to walk us through what's going on. So Dr. Clardy, take it away.
Well, here we are at this very scary moment where we actually have those troops in the streets that conservatives said that we would do at some point, that somehow we as liberals and progressives, that somehow we would be the ones that would take this country down a fascistic path. No, the opposite has happened. And David Frum yesterday posted something on Instagram, and David Frum is no liberal. David Frum is no progressive. He is a dyed-in-the-wool conservative. And he said, and this ran chills through my bones when I read it, that California is a dress rehearsal for what this administration wants to do, that they want to suppress free speech, that they want to go after their political enemies. They have targeted Democratic-run states, Democratic-run cities. We heard these musings from Trump before, but now he's doing it for real, for real. Now, okay, worst case scenario, let's just say that we saw the type of conditions in LA that we saw in 1992, where you actually have loss of life, massive destruction of property, and the California National Guard could not handle it. In that case, federal intervention would be necessary. We are nowhere near that point right now. A few loose cannons have burned some cars and thrown a few rocks. That's it. Governor Newsom did not request federal troops. And we're talking about the Marines now. He did not request that the president federalize the California National Guard. Neither did Mayor Bass. But President Trump took it upon himself to take this very drastic action. He has sycophants in the Defense Department, like Pete Hegseth and others, who are going along with this. J.D. Vance is going along with this. The people in the high military brass have been eerily silent about that, and that alone is scary. And so what I'm afraid of is that David Frum may be right, that we may see an instance where you have these protests now breaking out in Dallas and in Louisville. Some broke out in Louisville, Chicago, and other places where the president may have free reign to try to impose a police state on those particular cities. And so for those of us who are speaking out against this, we need to be very, very vigilant about what the administration is doing, because he is going to take this to the next step and the next level. He's not going to stop with California.
All right. So what is he, right? So here's the question though, like what actually, so he clearly does not care about democracy, his adherence to the Constitution, not really a deal breaker, right?
He has to ask his lawyers.
Yes, yeah, ask his lawyers about that. So where are they headed? So there's been a lot of terms thrown around, Dr. Clardy.
Can I just say this outright and just say the unspoken part, which no one is saying in the news? Donald Trump is a fascist.
Fascist.
Period. Full stop. He wants to be a dictator. He is acting like one. He has emulated them. He has shown public respect for Xi, for Putin, for Erdogan. He's done this. And democracy is truly under threat under this administration. I never thought I would see the day I would see these actions coming from the president of the United States. But here we are. But folks, it's going to get worse, because Saturday is coming up. Yes, we should celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Army. Definitely. Because we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That's great. That's historic. I remember the bicentennial as a child. This is a big deal. But what's going to happen Saturday is that Trump is going to use this to focus on himself. It happens to coincide with his birthday, and he is going to love those images of watching those troops with their hardware going down those DC streets in review, just like we saw in the Soviet Union, just like we saw with the Chinese, just like we see sometimes with the North Koreans. And I can't believe that I'm about to say this because I never voted for him. I never intended to vote for him. I have opposed him at every chance I could get. Hell has truly frozen over tonight. I agree with Rand Paul.
About what?
We're starting to see those images that we did not want to see. We did not want to emulate the Soviet Union with those military parades. We didn't want to emulate the North Koreans, but that's exactly what we're going to do on Saturday.
No, yeah, no, good point. And it's expensive and it's destructive and it's not the way we roll. Has rolled. All right, so I have to put a pin in it because I promised our next guest that we would be super on time. So we're gonna come back to the conversation about what exactly is going on at the federal level and what type of government they're trying to impose on us. We have one vote that it's fascism. And
I have a reading list. I have some bibliography I want to share with everyone.
The professor's going to give you some homework, people. So make sure to stick around. But we're going to move now to Representative Adam Moore, friend of the show, who's been on many, many times. Very proud of the fact that he's in Frankfort. We worked hard. We endorsed him, and we worked hard. Not as hard as he worked, obviously, but definitely worked to get people to be aware of what a great candidate they had on their ballots in his district. And now he's been repaid with that victory. He's actually on the Kentucky Make America Healthy Again task force. Is that right?
Yeah, I think technically Kentucky comes after it, so it's Make America Healthy Again Kentucky Task Force.
That makes sense. Whatever. So there's this task force, and it's talking about is it taking kind of marching orders from Trump's MAGA, or it's really just this kind of open-ended thing that they want to do? What is it about?
That's a great question. And I think the way you originally kind of framed it, almost like it was punishment that I'm on there. Like, oh, here's this great guy and he's on the MAGA task force. I'm glad that I get to be on there. For your viewers and listeners who don't know, I've got a background as a health and fitness coach. My wife is a physical therapist. Health is very important to me. I don't come from a health background in my family, but my in-laws that I'm married into, my father-in-law is an endocrinologist. My mother-in-law is a dentist. So I have a lot of health around me, and health is something that is very important to me. And Kentucky is kind of known to not have the best health outcomes. So if there's anything that we can do legitimately to increase the health outcomes, and for me also the accessibility of health care in Kentucky, then I want to be a part of that if that's doable. So I'm excited to be there. I don't think we're taking marching orders from what's happening in the White House. But we did have one meeting so far, and the plan is to meet monthly. And in our first meeting, the chairwoman, Senator Funky Frohmeyer, went around and allowed everyone to kind of speak about their priorities. And we didn't really get into the conspiracy theories that you might think of just because it's the Make America Healthy Again. We weren't talking about 5G. We weren't talking really about vaccines. We weren't talking about chemtrails. We did have a guest who brought those things up, but we thanked them for their time and they were allowed to then move on. But most of us spoke about nutrition. We talked about access to healthy foods. And that was something that really kind of went across the board for many of us, Republican and Democrat in the House and the Senate. I brought up some stuff as far as physical activity, myself being a fitness coach, knowing how important physical activity is for mental health, the hedge it is against those who have depression and other signs of mental health degeneration, but also the part that it plays along with nutrition and hedging against chronic disease, whether that is obesity, is heart disease, is diabetes. So I kind of spoke about those things, and I'm excited to us keeping our minds on what is scientific, what is proven, what the studies say, and not jumping off the deep end of any kind of crazy pool.
Yeah. So fluoride did not come up?
Fluoride came up in the opening statement from the chairwoman, but she said that it is a topic of discussion that will probably not be had in this task force.
Okay. A little crazy virtue signaling, but we're not going to focus on it. Anyway, I appreciate you being there for sure. And I think you've proven to be impactful and effective at getting your health concerns moving in a terribly, you're a Democrat in a overwhelmingly Republican space, yet you made some, I think, really important headway with some of your priority legislation in terms of health issues. So it's great that you've been recognized and are brought on there, and hopefully you'll find some common ground and you guys won't take away vaccines.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm wearing my purple for y'all tonight. I know your mission is to turn Kentucky purple, so I'm part of that movement, which I'm all about. But when I'm talking about things on the House floor and in committee, I talk about those purple things, like my things that had to do with health last year. One passed the House, but didn't go into law. We need to get it through this next year. But that was for affordable epinephrine. That's your EpiPens, that no one should be priced out of life-saving care. And we passed that through the House unanimously. I had another bill to make chronic pain treatments more accessible and also more affordable. So we know so many people who've gotten into pain have fallen into addiction, especially with the opioid epidemic. If we can get more people to have authorization to see the physical therapist instead, or the massage therapist instead, or get the acupuncture instead, having those things covered by plans where you can go and get your 20 visits and it costs the same as going to your primary care physician copay. So you're paying a lot less. It's approved. You're not having to get every single session approved by your primary care provider. That's going to be less people on opioids. It's going to get people back to health in a more healthy and natural way. So that was one of my bills that had to do with chronic pain. So that I'm looking at these things that are not a red versus blue. Like my solutions are going to be as centric as possible, as purple as possible, because we don't need to be playing political games with people's health and access to healthcare.
We don't. And we don't. So I'm just going to say that, certain folks on certain sides of the aisle do that stuff. We don't do that. And I'm just going to proudly claim, you know what? Vaccines are awesome. And they are an amazing advance. And the fact that we've got somebody in DC who was firing all the vaccine advisors because they were appointed by Biden. These are scientists, right? So I don't want to drag you into it. You're going to try to make things better in Frankfort. And Godspeed, sir. But the backdrop of that conversation around Maha makes me a little bit nervous. But Chris, you came up. You have a question for Representative Moore?
Yeah, I was curious of what some of the solutions that y'all talked about in providing or gaining better access to nutritious food for folks around Kentucky.
So I would just being honest with you, Chris, we haven't really discussed solutions yet. It was more about letting ourselves be heard as far as what we were thinking on our mind, as far as the concerns we wanted to look into. But I'm glad you asked, because I'm a very solution oriented person. When that meeting happens, when people get together and we have a discussion, I want there to be action steps. I want there to be outcomes for us to take. And I said this to the committee chairwoman. I said, I hope that we actually come out of this with meaningful legislation that we will get passed in 2026. One thing I spoke about was food as medicine, and that is a project that's been taken on by Commissioner Shell, Kentucky's agriculture commissioner. And that's a way that we try to get Kentucky farmers to get their produce into more Kentucky stores and more places, but also into our schools, into our retirement centers. How can we help our farmers? How can we help our Kentucky agriculture industry while at the same time increase the access of healthy foods and fresh produce to Kentuckians who might be in a food desert or might be in somewhere that they just don't have that option?
That would be fantastic. I tried to get more local foods into where I work at, and there was a bit of some pushback, I think mostly because they're under time crunch and ability to process whole foods that aren't just brought in to heat up or whatever. I mean, they do cook some, but that takes a little bit more cooking than I think what they typically have to do. And my wife is a farmer, so
he's biased. He's got a biased question for sure.
Yes,
he cares. He's a caring Kentuckian, and I like that.
That's awesome. Dr. Clarity, any questions, comments for Representative Moore?
Yes, Representative Moore, and I'm very proud to call you that. I'm very, very honored to address you as Representative Moore. So I want to let you know I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
But also I wanted to ask this question, and you mentioned it, and I almost jumped out of my chair. The question of food deserts. This may not be as big a problem maybe in Kentucky as it is in some more urban, northern, West Coast areas, but it does seem to be a problem where people cannot get access to fresh fruits, vegetables, and lean meats and so forth like that. Will you all be considering working with nonprofit organizations, churches, faith-based organizations in order to make sure that that problem is resolved in some of these areas in the Commonwealth?
I certainly hope so. I'm all about public-private partnerships. Like, the government does not need to be the full means of every single thing. If we can use us as a facilitator to allow these other organizations that are already doing a great job in their mission, then let's lift them up and enable them. So there's one organization that's headquartered in Lexington. It's called God's Pantry, but they serve, I think, around 60 counties in Kentucky, and they are the food, the boots on the ground after tornadoes, after hurricane things, after flooding, but also year round too. They're making sure that kids, when they're out of school in the summer, they still have food that they were getting when they're missing out on that. There's all this research that they had done and been a part of that they realized that there was this backslide during summer for students who are on SNAP or students who are on the meal plan at school. And so, like, they have programs now to get our children meals year round because it's so important for their health and development. Why would we not try to lift up an organization like God's Pantry? And that's just one example. And there are many of those in the Commonwealth. So I can't say for sure, Dr. Clardy, but I absolutely hope so, because I think it's our job to grease the wheels and help make it happen. And then they're the doers. They're the experts. Let them go do it.
And we have a similar organization like that in Murray called Soup for the Soul. And also Neatline. They also do some things that are very similar. We have the backpack program here where we work with Murray Elementary, Murray Junior High, Callaway County, and so forth. So that may be a template that you all may want to, as you're studying the model to work on this. This may be something you may want to examine as you do your work. And it's good work that you all are doing. I'm very proud of what you all are doing, and I support you 100%.
Thank you. I know I don't have much time left because it's 7:26 right now, and I'm going to work on getting Remy to bed at 7:30. But one thing I do want to be mindful of in the MAGA task force, I do have a fear of taking people's SNAP benefits, their food programs away under the guise of health, saying that this thing has a lot of sugar, it's not healthy, so you can no longer buy that with your EBT card. And I understand, I absolutely want people to have access to healthy foods on their EBT cards with their SNAP benefits, but food deserts do exist. And if my choice is to go into my town and there might just be a little small grocer and it's like loaves of bread and peanut butter and things from Hostess that are shelf stable, like that might be what I have access to because maybe I don't have a car. Maybe the closest actual grocery store is the next county over that actually has produce. We want to get actual Kentucky produce on those shelves, but we can't start taking things away, and definitely not unless we actually have more things there that are better options for them to eat. So I'm going to be playing a lot of defense in case someone does try to take away those benefits from Kentuckians, because yes, I want Kentuckians eating fruits, vegetables, whole foods, absolutely. But I don't want Kentuckians going hungry because we've taken away the only food they have access to.
That's right.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And of course, it all is happening in the broader context of Republicans are taking away SNAP benefits, right, in DC, and so you guys at the state level are going to be faced with some tough choices as those federal dollars go away. What do you do, right, to meet the need? So, all right, well, thanks so much for joining us. I know Remy has to get to bed, and I promised you we would be brief, but thank you so much for being so responsive and coming on and sharing your experiences with the task force, Representative Moore.
Absolutely. And for the listeners out there, I represent the 45th House District, part of Lexington and Jessamine County. I will be running again in 2026. So KY deserves more, MOORE.com. You can find more about me, or just Google Adam Moore to learn more. Or if you want to support me, you can do that too. Thank you all so much.
And, not the last time you'll see Representative Moore on the show. I promise you that for sure.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So now we want to talk again, kind of get what's the federal situation? What's the I don't know, the actual structure that we should be looking for. Like, so we've heard fascist. The term oligarch's been thrown around a lot. We've also heard there's just a whole long laundry list.
Technocracy.
All right, Chris, what's that one?
That's being ruled by essentially the least capable people. Yeah,
Yeah.
people are not qualified to do the job.
Well, that seems a little on the nose.
Yeah.
Totalitarianism, kleptocracy, imperialism. Dr. Clardy, I know you kind of said you're saying you see fascism, but can you walk us through a couple of those different those different terms of political systems and what we need to be watching for?
Well, we're seeing one that's very obvious, and that is the cult of personality of Donald Trump. He has people who, in his first term, he learned his lesson. He had hired people like Mad Dog Mattis at Defense, Rex Tillerson at State. They had no problems challenging him and telling him when he was wrong. And when they did that, he got deep into his feelings, and they were out of a job. And they were derided, and they were targeted by his MAGA cult. He learned his lesson. 4 years later, he has hired people that will obey his every command. They will defend him regardless of how ridiculous his ideas are sounding. I mean, it makes my skin crawl every time I hear members of Congress who know better refer to his legislative package as a big, beautiful bill. What American president has addressed their particular legislative packages at? We've heard Great Society, New Covenant, New Beginning, New Deal, but big, beautiful bill. This comes right out of Donald Trump's vocabulary. And so they're emulating him. We saw this in Nazi Germany. We saw this in Mussolini in Italy, Il Duce. We saw this with Franco in Spain, where the leader sets the tone for the culture. And this is happening in a republic where we have a constitution that has protections against that very thing, the very thing that the framers warned us about. And even in some of the anti-federalist debate, Patrick Henry said that it's conceivable that one day your president may become your king. He saw these tendencies in human nature. And our Constitution is so predicated to prevent that from happening. But what's happened is this cult of personality has bit by bit shredded those protections and shredded the rule of law and the Constitution. And we're starting to see that. The rule of law is what the President of the United States says it is. That is dangerous for democracy.
Yeah.
That means he can target his opponents. He can use the military. He can use intel. He can use any other structures in order to crush dissent. Now, okay, to be fair, have we had these type of tendencies in America before? Certainly, with FBI and J. Edgar Hoover and the counterintelligence program. Sure, we've had that. But on this level, we've not had this before. And we are in a very dangerous place. And this is where now it falls upon us to wake people up out of their apathy and get them to watch this and watch all of this unfold. My wife and I had this inside joke that she comes in from work. My wife's a nurse, so she works these late hours, and she'll come in and she'll see me watching cable news or listening to the BBC or watching some podcast, and she will call me gloom and doom. Well, there's a reason for that. We're in that moment.
Yeah.
Where if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves in the same type of conditions that Nazi Germany found itself in the 1930s. And that is not hyperbole. And the scary thing about it is the framework is put in place. If it's not Trump, what comes after Trump is going to be even more scarier than that.
Yep. Yep. All right. So we got a lot of terms. I think, for me personally, it does feel like this is authoritarianism on a lot of levels. But I guess it doesn't matter what you use as long as you make it clear that it's not a good thing. And what's the these are not democracies. These terms, none of these are democracies. And we're a constitutional republic, but it's a democracy. I think the Constitution piece is really important. the fact that this is the Constitution is not a deal breaker for these guys is a real huge concern, right? And I think there's been a lot of stories about potentially some new oath he wants the military to take that is an oath to Trump as opposed to the Constitution, right? And especially as we gear up for his big Flag Day 250th anniversary of the Army, or the Continental Army. It's chilling, right? Because that's obviously with tanks on the streets and Marines being mobilized in LA for what is very small number of protests. Like, he's got a playbook here, and it's an authoritarian playbook. And if we don't stop him now, I think it's hard to wrench back some of those powers and those separations and those norms as he just shatters them all, right?
Exactly.
So tough times. Chris, any thoughts about yes, we're facing a challenging moment, but what do you feel like we should be calling it? What do you think works to tell the story and engage people who might not be paying attention?
I do like the term kakistocracy, but I'm sure most people don't know what that term is. Other than that, authoritarianism is good. Fascism is good. I worry that even those terms may seem muddled to some folks.
Right.
But it's important, as Dr. Clardy has mentioned, is that we stand up and try to push back, and you had mentioned, Aaron, against this moment to stop his momentum. And in recent history, we have seen a country kind of start sliding down that authoritarianism trail and then stop it, at least for a little while, in India, when all the farmers got their tractors out and clogged up all the roads, and did that for I don't remember how long that they did that for. It was many days. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was all consecutive. Maybe it was, but so India's had to fight with this recently too, with Modi, mm-hmm. And they put a stop at least to a little bit of it. And so we are going to have to do similar things. We may have to just get out in the roads and stop traffic and interrupt people's lives to get them to pay attention and notice what's going on.
Yeah.
Because this is a big deal. We're losing the government that has been a work in progress to be more free and fair for a long time, and now it's reversing course in a major way. And if we don't put the brakes on, then and it completely breaks down, then what are we going to be left with? And how long is it going to take to fix?
Yeah. So huge considerations, important questions, and it really at this point want to bring on our second guest, Craig Blair, who is with Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance. He's been, I think, if in terms of how you fight the Trump administration and what's happening, I think he's well placed to help us think through what matters, share what he's been doing and his group has been doing. But Craig, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. And I want to make 2 points before we get into local stuff here. But just to make a point about Maha, Kentucky, and what Adam Moore's doing, I think what we have to remember is with these states that have GOP supermajority legislatures, they don't have to do a lot. They don't have to pass these regulations to outlaw fluoride and stuff. All they have to do is roll back the state regulations, just like Kentucky did with SB 89, the Water Act that they pushed through in this last session. And they rolled back Kentucky's standards to basically match the federal standards. Well, when the federal government gets rid of the EPA, there aren't going to be any federal standards. So yeah, Kentucky doesn't, Maha, Kentucky doesn't have to outlaw fluoride in Kentucky. They just have to say, we're going to follow the federal guidelines. So that's the first point I want to make. And then the second point I want to make, discussion about what do we call this? Is it an oligarchy? Is it fascism? I think what you're forgetting is that America is a melting pot, and the GOP melting pot is fascism and oligarchy and kleptocracy and everything all together. So it's just a big, beautiful stew of horrible things.
Yeah, it's a big tent, and it's ugly.
Yeah.
And he's the ringmaster under the circus tent, really. All right, so Craig, tell us a little bit about Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance, what it is, where did it come from?
Okay, Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance, we're a grassroots protest group. We started right here in Lexington. I was born in Appalachia. I've been in central Kentucky since I was 13 or 14 years old, except for going away to college for 4 years. I've been here and lived here. My wife and I have raised our 2 kids here in Fayette County Public Schools. We've got a small business and everything. So we are Central Kentuckians through and through, as are most of our members. None of us are paid. We're all local. We're not bussed in. So we are a local grassroots protest group. We're advancing a progressive liberal agenda at the local, state, and federal levels. We do that by taking direct action to demand justice, equity, and progress through organized peaceful protest, public education, and community support. We actively oppose fascist ideology, including the agenda outlined in Project 2025, and we work to defend democratic values and the Constitution. We are patriots, and we're Americans.
Well, all right. I don't have any problem with any of that. That all sounds really good. So then so that all sounds great, but what you're really doing is you are out there on the streets day in and day out.
We are on this. Yeah, and the way we started, honestly, on February 7th, some of our other local activists, a few older activists that have been doing this much longer than I have, they went to Mitch McConnell's office on February 7th, and they were escorted out by the police. And I saw that on TV, like many people in Kentucky, and I was furious about it. For 2 days, I cussed and carried on. And then I called my buddy Dan, and I said, hey, we ought to go sit in at Mitch's office and make him arrest us. And he talked me down a little bit from there. And we got a few of our other friends together. And that next Monday, I think it was February 10th, we showed up at Mitch's office on Harrodsburg Road. And 8 of us protested there in the cold February morning. And as we were there, one of my clients actually drove by, and she texted me and said, hey, Dr. Blair, I saw you out on Harrodsburg Road. If you're going to do anything else like that, let me know. And I was like, hey, I ought to make a Facebook group so we can plan this. And so now, 124 days later, we've staged 86 protests. We're up to over 2,700 members in our Facebook group. Unfortunately, not that many people are showing up for protests. But we do have members. At first we were keeping the membership local as much as we could, but now we've had people join. Just today, I admitted somebody in Austria who wanted to see what we were doing here in America. We've had people from Germany, people from Arizona have taken some of our ideas, and they're developing them for their own locality. So, and that's what it's about. Just sharing our ideas. Giving everybody a chance for their voice to be heard. That first day that we were out there on the street, even though it was cold and it was miserable, we laughed and we talked. It was just good to be with like-minded people, and to see the hope in this dark time.
Yep. Well, I love the instinct for sure. I think I've seen lots of your protests throughout, the 86 days of protest, I guess you've done, and really impressive.
That's 124 days of protest.
Oh,
124 days of protest, 86 events. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So protesting all of them, all the days, and working really hard to be out on the on the streets on as many of them as possible. I joined you at Harrodsburg Road. That's a great one because no one knows that Mitch's office is there. Really, it's not like there's not a big sign, but we know, and we know why we're there. And you hope that maybe Mitch's staff see you. But it's a lot of eyeballs because it's a really busy street. So it's a good spot to be at no matter why you're there. Right. But we started as the Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee. That was our kind of first iteration. And we did kind of Monday protests outside of Mitch's office. We did, this became Moscow Mitch Monday live stream once COVID hit. I definitely feel it. It's great. It's important. And you get a lot of honks. Get a lot of waves. Sometimes they wave with all 5 fingers, sometimes just one. But it's important to be out there. Chris, questions for Craig?
Yeah, I'm curious of what kind of pushback are you getting, if much at all? I mean, I know Lexington's pretty a nice blue spot in the state, but there's still going to be some MAGA nuts out there.
Yeah, you're right, and right now we have 4 weekly regular protests that we do. We do Monday rush hour morning at Mitch's office on Harrodsburg Road. We do Wednesday at the Leestown VA office. Thursday we're in the afternoon rush hour out at Fayette Mall, and Saturdays from 1 to 3 we're out at Hamburg at the intersection of Sir Barton Way and Man o' War. And we've picked all those areas because they are high traffic, high visibility areas. And there's always safe, we want to make sure the protesters are safe. So we have to make sure parking is fairly easy to get to and that, there's good sidewalk and stuff like that. But, we do get some pushback, Lexington, like you said, is but we, and so most of the honks and thumbs up, are pretty positive. I'd say probably 80% is positive. But we do get people telling it, the biggest, response that we get is just Trump, sometimes they'll say, what about Obama? And, okay, if we want to talk about history, I don't think any of them know anything about history, but that's why we're in this mess. And we do, it does occasionally get a little more serious. We've had a good number of Nazi salutes. We've had a couple people brandish handguns at us. We've had a knife brandished at us. We will have a car swerve toward the protesters. So, there is some pushback, but, mostly it's positive.
Car swerve, that's frightening.
The roadside protests, they're a whole because when we started doing this, after we did a couple of them, I was like, I need to look into how to make this as safe as possible. And so I started looking through ACLU and Amnesty International literature and stuff, and all of that de-escalation and know your own rights and NVDA stuff. It's more about protesting in a group like a rally. There's very little stuff out there about doing these little roadside protests. So we're having to kind of take that information and mold it to what we need it to be.
Awesome. Dr. Clardy, any questions or thoughts about what Craig's up to?
Yes, I happen to be a student of the 1960s, and a lot of the tactics that were used in the anti-war movement with the teach-ins, with the civil rights movement, with the early sit-ins, those were quite effective at bringing attention to the problem, educating the problem, and also forcing the system into negotiation. Is your group following any of those type of patterns of protest and resistance? I know that you're out there in the streets, and that's a good thing. You're networking with people, but are you using any of those older tactics from that time period to draw attention to your movement and also forcing the system to buckle a little bit?
We've talked about when will be the appropriate time to use those, NVDA tactics, nonviolent direct action, we feel like we're not quite there yet. Right trying to increase public awareness of what's going on, and grow our ranks. Like I said, we have over 2,700 people in the Facebook group. The largest one of our roadside protests that we had was about 66 people. And typically we'll have 20 to 40 people at a roadside protest, so that's pretty good. But to do more of that, sit-ins and stuff like that, you have to have a more structured group. You have the group, you have the members who are going to do the action and potentially be arrested, and then that are going to record. So there's and we're growing. We're still in our infancy. We're only 4 months old. I feel like we've done more in our first 100 days than Trump has, but that is our goal, is to use some of those tactics, and that's things that we're talking about all the time. And like you said, just a tip of the hat to to the civil rights movement and stuff. We realize most of us that are out there are middle-aged white people, and so we're very cognizant that we don't want to force our voice on other classes, the minorities and stuff. But we realize that we have a great deal of privilege, and if we can use that privilege to give, to lend them their voices to be heard, then that's what we're trying to do. And we do have minority members of the group who don't come out to the protest, and they say it's simply because they don't feel safe. And we, during the first few weeks, we were like, we really were upset. We were like, how can we get more minority people involved? And then once we started talking to them, and we realized, they were like, we love what you're doing, we'll support you, but we're not coming out. We just don't feel safe. And so that made us feel like what we're doing is even more important, because they can't come out and speak. So we're speaking for them.
Right.
So it's, we appreciate that history of activism that we're feeding on, and we're just happy to be doing our part.
Well, it's pretty awesome. I think one thing to talk about now, like we've got, these I met you because we kind of collaborated on some of the bigger protests, came together. We protest outside of Andy Garland Hale Bar, the Fourth's policy talk at the Lexington Chamber there at the hotel next to Rupp Arena. Great turnout, amazing media. And then, started doing some of these other bigger mass mobilization with a whole coalition of, 5 or 6 groups working really hard to make these events as successful as possible. Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance has done amazing work helping support and bring folks out for those events. And we've got No Kings right around the corner, right? So that's happening on Saturday on the 14th. This big, huge 1,800 cities around the country. I think 10-ish in Kentucky alone that are having protests, rallies. Some of it's like, side of the road sign waving. Some of it's, we'll have, I think, easily 3,000 people if the weather is good. 3,000 plus folks in Lexington at Courthouse Plaza. And, I think really putting a very clear point on, we do not want a lawless administration running roughshod over the Constitution. Craig, what are your thoughts about these mass mobilizations and the role they play in this overall resistance and opposition that we're all a part of, really?
I mean, I think the mass mobilizations and these bigger rallies are, they're just another tool in the arsenal. Just like the roadside rallies, and we have this silent protest that our group does. It's This is Fascism, where we all dress in black, and we have 14 signs that have the 14 characteristics of fascism on it, and we just go and silently walk through areas. We've done it downtown at Triangle Park. We've done it at a couple of the coalition rallies. We've done it at the farmers market. And so anything like that, some people like to come to the big rallies. Some people just like to do the street protests. Some people like the more artistic, political theater type things. And so I think all those things, are part of that toolbox to again increase public awareness of the atrocities that are occurring. And atrocities. That's what people have to understand. Yeah, you can say, well, he cut off, he shut down USAID. Well, yes, they closed that department, but in doing so, they've killed 300,000 people by denying them food and medical aid. And they have warehouses full of food and medical aid that are expiring. It's already been paid for, but apparently just out of spite, instead of sending it to the people and letting them use it because it's already been paid for, they're letting it ruin, and then they're throwing it away. So it's the spiteful things like that. I don't know how to say it any more clearly. If we've had people say, well, this isn't fascism. The Nazis were fascist. Like it didn't start with the Holocaust. We're trying to keep it from getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. So important to just underscore, that we're on a trajectory, right? And if we don't stop them now, and if we don't, hold the line on our democracy and, the tool or constitutionally, guaranteed rights and, how our government's supposed to work, it's all downhill from here. So I think it's really important that, those mass mobilizations bring people together, because they have to break people out of their silos or their bubbles, because, these, the four folks on your screen right now, very, engaged. We do way too much doom scrolling. We, whatever your wife calls it, Dr. Clarity,
gloom and
doom. But most people don't do that, right? We're a subset, and there are a lot of people I just want to watch some sports and get through the day. I'm not going to be deep diving on which constitutional offense of the Trump administration is the worst, right? So we got to figure out how to get to people, and I think enormous crowds coming together to say we're fed up and we're not taking it anymore, that's a way. I think having great signs on the side of the road help get people alerted to there are things going on. But we got to break through, right? Because the other side, it's on Fox News, and they've found the images they've wanted out of LA to scare more white people about what's going on in the coasts, and how oh yeah, that California is out of hand and it's ungovernable, and thank God Trump's finally stepping in, because all these illegal aliens were a real problem, right? So that that's the actual language they're using, and we got to break through somehow, because we know that it's not all vicious criminals that were sent to CCOT. It's gay makeup artists as well, right? And we got to tell these stories in a way that break through. I think the mass mobilizations are really important to help do that. Also really important because, as you pointed out, Craig, your first, even though it was cold and it was an enormous amount of people, there's being in community together, showing up, doing something, right? It makes you feel so much better than just doom scrolling. So I think it's all really important. I'm really glad that Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance is a part of the coalition with Progress Kentucky, with 5051, with Bluegrass Activist Alliance, with Gathering for Democracy, with AFT, a lot of fantastic groups. This event, NAACP's Lexington branch is involved in helping us run it, which is wonderful. And I think it's a great coalition for sure. But we all got to do what we can, and you got to be mindful that this is a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right.
We got to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of each other. It shouldn't even be a marathon. It should be a relay race, right? Sometimes people are going to need to tap out and take time to take care of themselves. So Craig, any thoughts you have about kind of what we need to be doing over the next 18 months between now and the midterms? What's your vision and trajectory for Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance?
Well, and I just wanted to say, you had mentioned the coalition, and that has been so important for us. And, when we started this back in February, the 8 of us were sitting around, and we were like, there has to be a way to get bigger rallies. We were doing the roadside protests. We were like, there has to be a way to get bigger rallies here in Lexington. And so, we hooked up with 5051 KY. And it was interesting in those early days because obviously, we were the new kid on the block, and nobody knew us. They didn't know really what to think about us. And I reached out to Bluegrass Activist Alliance and some other groups in town, and they were like, oh, kind of, and I guess rightly so, they didn't really know what to expect, but it's been great to see these relationships grow. And it's such a good community of activism here in Central Kentucky. And we all have the same goals. And I think that's an important thing to remember. We all may be coming at it from different perspectives, but the goal is to save the democracy. And like Andy says, through it, and we'll get through it together. But over the next 18 months, that's what I always say. We are, as private citizens, our two tools are our voice and our vote. And we're not going to get to exercise our vote for another 18 months or so. So right now, it's just a matter of standing up and speaking out and spreading the word. And I think it's calling out. I hated in Trump 1.0 when they would talk about alternative facts and things like that. I'm like, they're lying, for God's sake, just call it a lie. Right. And now, I'm like, I think we just need to be blunt about it. They're lying, they're fascists, they're racists. They may say they're not racist, but if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck,
Excellent. Dr. Clarity, any questions or thoughts for for Craig as we wrap up?
Oh, no, just the fact that one thing that I think that we can do right at the immediate moment is to go back to the old teach-ins. And we talked about people don't know. A lot of people are not watching CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, cable networks. A lot of them are not listening to NPR. And some people are just, and that doesn't mean that they're dumb. It just means that they're just trying to make it. They're just trying to get through life, just trying to get through the day. But once people are made aware of what's at stake, I think that's important. So we need to go back and revisit works by Anne Applebaum, Democracy Incorporated, the works of Tim Snyder on liberty, on freedom, on unfreedom, and on tyranny, some of the things that he's done. And just each one teach one. And this podcast in itself is a great venue by which we can get the word out. And I think each of us now, with us all having access to the internet, all of us having access to our own platform, our own global platform, each of us in our own way can get that information out and mobilize and work with groups like Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance and Progress Kentucky and other similar organizations to let people know what's really going on. I think that's very critical.
For sure.
And can I just say one more thing?
Yep, go right ahead.
I think your point about people aren't dumb. There's a difference between dumb and ignorant. There are a lot of people that just don't know, like you said, because they haven't. And that's a very specific thing that the GOP has done. Their war on intellectualism.
Yes,
and that didn't start with Trump. That started in the 70s with Newt Gingrich and Mitch McConnell and Jerry Falwell, the moral majority.
Richard Nixon.
Exactly. Yeah, and then they got their hooks in. Their first Trump basically was Ronald Reagan.
Right.
So this is a decades-long game that the GOP has been playing. It's just Donald Trump happened to come along, and he was that cult of personality that they needed to catapult their agenda.
Right. Yeah. And then, I think he was very clear. He didn't know what Project 2025 was. He wasn't supportive of it. But all the people he put in charge of things were very familiar with it. And they are absolutely advancing it.
It's a three-headed snake. Donald Trump is the figurehead, but Stephen Miller and Russell Vought are much more dangerous than Donald Trump are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they're laser focused and they're not going to get distracted by the squirrel or whatever, right? So thanks so much for joining us, Craig. Thanks for all the work Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance is doing. We'll see you out there Saturday at No Kings. So phenomenally important that people find their, as our friend Kit says, find their flavor of activism and what works for them and what, keeps them excited and motivated and in a community that can have an impact, because again it's going to be a long 18 months, and hopefully we do what we need to do, but really there's nothing we can do except for stand up and fight back between now and the next election, really.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
This may be inappropriate, but what's with the aluminum foil behind you?
His hat.
Is that a barrier? Is that a barrier from the radio waves being leaked from the Starlink satellites?
No, that's actually not aluminum foil. So these are growing shells.
Okay.
My wife is a farmer, so that's where she does her starters, and then that's a reflective curtain that she puts up so it can keep more of the light in.
I read about the Starlink satellites leaking radio waves today, so I thought maybe you were.
Right. That's to stop the Jewish space lasers. Everyone knows that.
we have the Golden Dome for that.
Right.
Oof. Thanks so much, Craig. Great to have you on. All right, so we are going to talk about our call to action right now. This is a very exciting time, and Chris, we're going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, so come out on Saturday for the No Kings rally. So where? The event is located at the same place as previous rallies. It's at the north lawn of Robert F. Stevens Courthouse Plaza lawn at 120 North Limestone. And so some event details. This will go on from 12 to 3, and there will be some drum circles. There'll be several speakers, and including Craig, who you just saw, some folks from AFT, Silas House, our Kentucky Poet Laureate, former Vice Mayor Steve Kay, Ellen Mueller, which Kentucky Student Voice Team, Dr. Basil Tochin, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, from the ACLU, Anna Whites, who's an attorney, and Reverend Clark Williams, the People's Campaign, and the only person, Ryan Davis, is the AFT teacher that's going to be speaking. And afterwards, after the speeches, there'll be an open mic and sidewalk occupation. So bring signs. It'll end at 2:55. Parking. So street parking is available around the courthouse plaza, in the library parking garage, and paid parking in the courthouse garage. We encourage all who can carpool to do so. If there's weather, rain and whatnot, then pay attention to Facebook for any updates on that. And want to give a shout out to all the folks who have helped organize this with Bluegrass Activist Alliance, Progress Kentucky, 5051 Kentucky, Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance, Kentucky 120 United AFT, NAACP Lexington, and Gathering for Democracy. Okay, so shout out to all those. Go out for No Kings. This one's in Lexington. There are many protests throughout the state and certainly throughout the nation. There's also a protest here in Berea, so yeah, look up where you can protest, stand up, and because we don't deal with kings here in America.
No kings here in America. All right, so yeah, definitely do it. I will say this: you can use, tell people you're coming. Use the Mobilize link, which you can find through the No Kings website. Facebook sucks. So using Facebook, we should not be encouraging people to use Facebook. Unfortunately, it's where the people are. So you got to go where the people are. That's the number one rule of organizing, right? But you got to a billionaire's got to like you for your stuff to be seen, right? This is all algorithm driven. So use the Mobilize link, sign up, help us build long-term power by giving us your email address. And so we can talk with you directly, not have to worry about a billionaire keeping us between you and us. Although then you have to actually open your emails. And I don't know how you all do with that. But anyway, all right. So, hey, we're going to call it a show. I want to say thank you so much for all the folks who helped make this show possible. Of course, our co-hosts, Chris and Dr. Clarity. Always a pleasure to chat politics with you guys. I think it's the first time we've had these three co-hosts on together, so that's exciting. I'm sure like fans of the show are like, oh, this is an interesting one. I'm sure they got their spreadsheets, they're tracking it. And really excited to have Rep Adam Moore join us. A huge fan of his work and what he does and how he does it. He works out a little bit too much for me, but otherwise I think he's like, amazing guy. And Craig Blair is awesome. Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance is awesome. I want to thank Parker Williams for producing the show. Ellen Muller, who is a new volunteer producer helping us get these shows together. So she shadowed Parker today, which is pretty exciting. So great show. Thanks to everybody. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, or CAVE. We are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Check out Forward Kentucky for your good progressive content. Bruce Maples does an amazing job of curating and adding insights. I think we'll probably get him on the show, sometime in the next 17 months or so for sure. But yeah, absolutely important place. Check it out. And then also want to point out how important it is that we have, great music. So Nate Orshan wrote and performed our theme song. You can find more information at natosongs.com. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Please join us next week for our 215th episode. Don't exactly know who our guest will be, but we'll probably have one, and they'll probably be awesome. And if you missed our weekly live stream on Facebook or on YouTube, audio podcasts and our show notes are available on Apple, on Spotify, really wherever you get your podcasts. So if you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening right now. Thanks so much for coming out. See you next week.